All right, whenever you're ready, bro.
But Yahusha, being full of the Ruach of, or spirit of set apartness, returned from Jordan, and the Ruach led him into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil for 40 days. And he ate nothing in those days. And when he had finished them, at the end, he was hungry. And the devil said to him, if you are the son of Yahuwah, tell this stone to become bread. Yahusha answered and said to him, it is written, a man does not live by bread alone, but by every utterance of Yahuwah. And Satan took him up to a high mountain, and he showed him all the kingdoms of the earth in a short time. And the devil said to him, I will give you all this dominion and its esteem, for it is delivered to me, and I give it to whomever I want. Therefore you will worship before me, it will all be yours. Yahushua answered and said to him, it is written, you shall worship Yahuwah your Elohah, and him alone you shall serve. And he brought him to Jerusalem, and he stood him on the pinnacle of the temple. And he said to him, if you are the son of Yahuwah, cast yourself down from here. For it is written, he will command his Malachim concerning you that they will protect you. They will carry you upon their arms, lest you should strike your foot on a stone. Yahushua answered, and he said to him, it has been said, you shall not tempt Yahuwah your Elohah. And when the devil had finished all his temptations, he departed from his presence for a time. And Yahushua returned in the power of the Ruach to Galilee, and a report went out about him in every place around them. And he was teaching in their assemblies, and he was being praised by every person. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been raised, and as he was accustomed, he entered the synagogue on the Shabbat day, and he stood up to read. And the scroll of Yeshaya the prophet was given to him, and Yahusha opened the scroll, and he found the place where it is written, the Ruach of Yahuwah is upon me, and because of this he has anointed me to preach the good news to the poor. And he has sent me, or glad tidings to the poor. He has sent me to heal broken hearts and to proclaim liberty to captives, vision to the blind, and to restore the crushed with forgiveness, and to proclaim the acceptable year of Yahuwah. Interesting that the David Boucher says the acceptable era of Yahuwah. And he rolled up the scroll and he gave it to the minister, and he went and sat down. But all who were in the synagogue fixed their eyes upon him, and he began to say to them, today this scripture is fulfilled in your ears. And all of them were testifying to it, and they were amazed at the words of favor that came out of his mouth. And they were saying, is not this Joseph's son? Yahushua said to them, doubtless you will say to me this proverb, physician, heal yourself, and everything that we are hearing that you have done in Capernaum, do also here in your town. He said, assuredly I say to you, there is not a prophet who is received in his town. And truly I say to you that many widows were in Yashral in the days of Eliyahu the prophet, when the heavens were shut for 3 years and 6 months, and there was great hunger in all the land. And Eliyahu was not sent to one of them except to Sarepta of Sidon, unto a widow woman. And there were many lepers among Yashral in the days of Elisha the prophet, and not one of them was purified, except Naaman the Syrian. And when they who were in the synagogue heard these things, they were all filled with rage. And they arose, and they thrust him outside of the city, and they brought him unto the ridge of the mountain on which the city was built, to cast him from the precipice. But he passed through the midst of them, and he departed. And he went down to Capernaum, a city of Galilee, and he was teaching them on the Shabbat. And they were astonished at his teaching, for his message was with authority. And there was a man in the synagogue who had rocks of filthy demons in him, and he cried with a loud voice, and he said, let us alone. What business do we have with you, Yahushua of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know you, who you are, the Kadash one of Yahuwah. And Yahushua rebuked it, and he said, shut your mouth and come out of him. And the demon threw him in the midst, and it came out from him, while he did him no harm. And great astonishment gripped everyone, and they were speaking with one another, and they were saying, "What indeed is this message? For with authority, with power, he commands the foul spirits, and they come out." And a report about him went out into the whole region that was around them. And when Yahushua went out from the synagogue, he entered the house of Shimeon, and Shimeon's mother-in-law was afflicted with a great fever, and they besought him for her sake. And he stood over her, and he rebuked her fever, and it left her. At once she arose, and she was waiting on them. The sun was setting, and they brought to him all of those who were very ill with various diseases, and he laid his hand on each one of them and healed them. Many demons were going out from many as they screamed, and they were saying, "You are the Messiah, the son of Elua." And he was rebuking them, and he was not allowing them to say that they knew that he was the Mashiach. And at daybreak he went out by himself to a deserted place, and the crowds were seeking him, and came to his place. They held to him that he would not depart from them. But Yahushua said to them, "I must proclaim the kingdom of Yahuwah to other cities also. It is for this I am sent." And he was preaching in the synagogues of Galilee. It was chapter 4, right? Okay, yeah, it was.
Yeah. What I thought is cool is I remember my mom, one of the JC movies she watched recently used that title from verse 34, the set apart one. And I find it interesting because it seems to be, depending on the manuscript, a allegory referring to the Son of Man or the Son of Yahuwah. It's a very specific title, and the demon calls him that. I would really like to look into Enoch and see how many times that phrase is used or that phrase is ever used, because I do see a little bit of theology from Enoch here in verse 34. The idea that they're basically they're saying, are you coming to destroy us already? Because we see that, the demons, which by the way are the Ruach of the Raphaim, they understand there's judgment against them. They understand they're going to be destroyed at the end. So they're confused why Yahushua's already there. And obviously Yahusha senses them, senses those demons in that man that was in the synagogue. So it's like weird. It's like the demons think that he's ready to throw them into the lake of fire or something. They're like, "Why are you destroying us?" And I kind of like how not Chuck Missler, Michael Heiser says that most likely the context of this is that the demons thought that he was ready to judge them before their time. And they understood that at the end of time, they're going to be judged and thrown into the lake of fire.
I think it also shows that they had somewhat of an understanding of Scripture, that they were supposed to be judged at the end of times, but the enemy didn't have so much understanding that he realized Yahushua was going to come first, in his first ministry, and then again in his second. Seems they didn't have understanding of that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I would agree. The giants definitely didn't. Maybe Satan did somewhat, but I don't think the Raphaim, obviously they weren't from the beginning, so they wouldn't know his word that well. Like you said, they know it somewhat. The demons definitely don't know his word that well, because you got to understand they were created from the Genesis 6 experiment, as some people call it. So you got to understand they did not pre-exist the earth being created. They would have not known about the Basora. They would have not known about, like Satan would have, because he was there.
Possible. I think it's possible that Satan doesn't know everything about the word. Just because they were in Shemayim with him doesn't mean that he's given them all of his mind and told them everything.
Yeah, that's true, because it's kind of like the idea you can almost make an allegory to like if you trained someone, say like a wrestler has a prodigy or apprentice, he's not going to train, he's going to teach him everything his student might know, but not everything he knows. And it's kind of like the same thing. Like, why would Yahuwah give Satan everything? He's like, I'll give you enough, bud, but I kind of foresee you're gonna betray me, so I'm gonna give you just enough, but I'm not gonna tell you every secret plan. But I do believe Satan at least knew about the Basor, and the reason I say this is because he definitely had foreknowledge about the virgin birth. If you look at all these other pagan religions, they have a false virgin birth in every pagan religion. There's a reason for that. Satan foreknew that. He knew about the Basora. He definitely did. He definitely knew that way before the scriptures were written. He knew about that. The angels probably knew about what Yahuwah's plan of salvation was going to be. So I think Satan realized, okay, well, the virgin birth is going to be a prophecy Yahuwah is going to use in his word. To make sure people don't believe in it, I'm gonna have my own counterfeit of it in my Babylonian religion. So, it's kind of like Satan thought of it this way. If I can make people think that it's just a myth, that the virgin birth's a myth and it's part of mythology, they won't believe in the good news. It's kind of like his little what do you call, plan B. He realized, okay, my first plan, Genesis 6, really didn't work to the way I wanted it to work. Now I got to figure out, okay, how can I stop people from believing in the coming Messiah? Oh, okay, let me make this fake counterfeit virgin birth with Semiramis, Nimrod, and Tammuz, okay, where she's impregnated by the rays of the Sun, okay, which is a type of virgin birth, but it's a false virgin birth. So basically he got, and again, I think like when you look at all these other movements, like the Zeitgeist stuff, that's Satan's toy. That's his implement, is to make people believe that the virgin birth is a myth. It's just one of another myth. And so I definitely agree with Brother Joshua, though, on a general consensus, Satan didn't know everything about scripture, but I do think he knew a lot. The fact that he could spout Psalms to Yahusha like verbatim like that, and he's twisting the book of Psalms, he's twisting certain other scriptures when he's testing him in the wilderness. Obviously, Satan had a decent knowledge of scripture, and you kind of see that with the Freemasons today. These devil worshippers, they know how to manipulate the scriptures. They're operated by that same spirit, and they're constantly trying to twist scripture, flip scripture upside down. The Gnostics even know they would have to know scripture well enough to flip it upside down, so they would have to know how to pervert it to deceive people. So Satan's ministers definitely know the scriptures a decent bit. But I think the giants lack a lot of understanding. Number one, like I said, they didn't pre-exist. They didn't exist until pretty much, a couple hundred years before the flood happened. So, I mean, or you could say maybe 1,000 years. I don't know the exact timeline of the first incursion, but worst case scenario, you're talking about the 1,000 years before the flood was when they were created, these demons. So they obviously don't know much scripture. They know probably whatever Satan has told them, in my opinion. That's what I believe. I think the fallen Malachim probably have informed them about certain things. It's also interesting too, Mom. Doesn't Peter say in the New Testament, he talks about how they were figuring, how can Yahuwah take Israel back? And it talks about all that the angels desired after to figure out the mystery. When Paul talks about the mystery, talks about the so it seems like even the two Malachim in heaven, even the righteous angels don't know everything. Yahuwah did not share everything with them, because they're like, how is he going to do this? Like the joke Rob Skiba says, who wants to tell Yahuwah he can't take her back? I could see Michael and Gabriel like trying to push one another, like, you better tell him you can't do that. So I definitely think there's some things hidden even from his ministers, his heavenly ministers, the Malachim. So they don't know everything in scripture. But yeah, very to point there. Trying to see if there was anything else that I really took out of this chapter.
I find it interesting. I had to go searching here because I could have sworn that I remember after Satan leaves him that angels attended him.
It depends on
Gospel of Mark.
it depends on the
The
account.
Gospel of
Yeah.
Mark puts it that way. There's a couple of differences in with the Mark account.
Yeah, it's different point of views, different things. I think Luke was not informed of a lot of stuff. From what I remember, Luke was like not really there around the time of this stuff actually happening. So Luke probably would have, Yahusha probably would have not told him everything. So it's very possible.
Mhm. Yeah, I just find it interesting. Says he was with wild animals and the angels attended.
I found it interesting that Elijah, in the days of Elijah, it references back to the famine. So let's see here. I think that's about it. I did like also the verse 18 about the reference back to Isaiah and about
Oh yeah.
This is a big deal here. I don't know why they don't have a cross reference here because it gets weird in the Masoretic. It gets really weird. In Isaiah 61, 1-2 in the Masoretic, they leave out recovery of sight to the blind, if I'm not mistaken. So in the Masoretic, it would read as in Isaiah chapter 61, 1-2, the spirit of the master Yahuwah is upon me because Yahuwah has anointed me to bring the glad tidings to the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, proclaim the release to captives, open of prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of Yahuwah and the day of the vengeance of our Elohim, to comfort all who mourn. This is a big deal, guys. Again, and no one's going to be able to convince me that, this is just they forgot to include that. No. You got to understand with the Masoretes, they don't believe Yahushua is the Messiah. So anything that he would have done in his ministry, they would literally omit from, the NIV sometimes pulls from, it's in your version of Isaiah 61, 1-2?
No, it's in here. Where
No. I'm talking about in the Old Testament, Mom.
Oh, all right.
Isaiah 61, 1-2. Is what I'm referring to. I'm not referring to the New Testament verse. I'm referring to where it's quoting from, and that the Masoretic text leaves it out, is what I'm saying. So like Isaiah 61, 1-2 in the Masoretic, even the ISR leaves out recovery sight to the blind, which is a big deal because that's what he did. So literally, they don't want you to think that he did that or that it's supposedly they would want people in Judaism to believe that's not a messianic prophecy to give sight to the blind. So that's probably what they will want people to believe. So they purposely left it out. Mind you that the Masoretic text, again, for those that don't know, is 1,000 years newer than the Septuagint. So obviously it's an omission. Common sense that they left it out on purpose because it was there for about 1,000 years in that verse. So obviously they left it out. So that's a big deal to me, Isaiah 61, 1-2. And that's another reason, in my opinion, why I don't trust the Masoretic text as my main Tanakh source because of things like that. But anyway, that's all I wanted to add in there. So I guess if no one else has anything else to bring up, I just want to say thank you, all of you guys, for joining us. Hopefully our new viewers and listeners and people following the channel, hopefully you enjoyed this study. Please stay tuned. Abba willing, we'll be planning on doing a Pentecost study, Yahuwah willing, either tomorrow night or day of Pentecost, the afternoon of June 6th. So please stay tuned. We will be probably doing some type of study either on the evening of Pentecost or the day of Pentecost this weekend. Anyway, thank you, brothers and sisters, for joining us, and Shabbat Shalom. All right.